Welcome back to Telltale Books. This time I'm going to do a book haul. I know I've gone on video before stating that I don't really like book hauls, and I still kind of feel that they are a bit weird because you're showing off a bunch of books that you just got. You most likely have never read these books. They might turn out to be total garbage that you're going to throw against the wall, and it's going to be at the local Goodwill store for $1 next week. But here you are showing off. Look at this book I got. Isn't it great? And I have seen videos where that has happened to people, where they get books and they're all excited about reading it, and they get into reading it and it turns out to be trash in their mind. They hate it. They absolutely hate it and regret having gotten it. I try to avoid that with Telltale. I try to steer you to books that I really believe in, that I think are worth your time, worth your money, and as also try to steer you to nice editions that are not going to break your wallet. So book hauls are a little hard for that reason, that I really don't know if I'm going to love every one of these books, but most of the books I get are part of a collection. They are valuable books. Whether I love the book or not, they're still considered classics, and the editions that I buy are either limited editions or they're first editions or at least very old editions that are valuable. So it's worth showing them even if it turns out I don't love them in the end. So these are the books I've got in the last 2 weeks. I'm going to start doing these on a regular basis, show you what is entering the Telltale library so that you kind of get an idea of the sorts of things that are coming up in our videos that I'm going to be talking about, and the sorts of books that we are all about at Telltale. Some of these, maybe someday, if I can swing it financially, I'll try to publish my own versions of some of these titles. I would absolutely love to publish my versions of every one of these that I show you on these videos. So, to get into it, to get started, I've got a stack of, I think, 11, mostly books. One of them's a magazine, mostly science fiction fantasy, and all of them beautiful. All of them are collector's items, and in my opinion, various degrees of collector's items. I'll start with the two that I have read already. Starting with this one, Star Begotten by H.G. Wells. I read this as a buddy read with Samantha from at Bound and Tagged, and loved it. We both loved it. I read this a long time ago when I was a kid. I had a paperback of it and loved it. It's not a very well-known book by Wells, but it is a brilliant book. It's a great book. The review, I did a review video. It's been posted. Look for it. I did it about a year and 3 months ago, I think. So look back in our list and you'll see Star Begotten by us. By me anyway. I reviewed it. Emily didn't. And at that time at the time that I read it with Samantha, I had a first edition United States copy, which is beautiful. It has a nice Art Deco cover, but the copy I got is not in the best condition. The dust jacket in particular is really falling apart. So, and when I was looking to get an old hardcover of Star Begotten, I was looking at, there were editions available of both the UK edition and the US edition. The UK edition, of course, is the true first edition, because Wells lived and wrote in England, and so the English publisher would have gotten it first. In most cases, The Time Machine's an exception. It actually got published in the United States like a couple weeks early. But the U.S. publisher published the wrong version of it. It's a very interesting story. I'll get into that again in another video sometime. But anyway, I saw this online, a little bit pricey, but beautiful. I mean, it's got a tiny bit of foxing on the top, but I mean, the dust cover is like absolutely perfect. Little bit tanned, and the pages are a little bit tanned. There's no writing in this that I can see flipping through. I didn't go page by page. This is a near fine quality book. It's amazing. So I saw this, and even though I shouldn't have spent the money, I did, because I love the book and I love this edition. I love this cover. I just had to have it for the Telltale collection. So now I have both the US and UK first editions of Star Begotten. The next one I've read, this is kind of replacing, because I've got this book, The Best of Stanley G. Weinbaum. It was the first of Ballantines' best of classic science fiction series back in the 1970s. And I have the first edition paperback of that, and the cover design of The Best of Stanley G. Weinbaum doesn't match the rest of the cover designs of the classic science fiction series. And I didn't honestly know they had ever done a revision of the cover to make it match the rest of the series. But apparently they did. I've got it right here. I saw this online because I was looking to replace my copy of the first edition, because that one is... I got it when I was really young. It's a bit beat. It's not terrible, but it's not the best. So I wanted a nicer, cleaner edition. And I got this one. It's like brand new, which is amazing. And it has the style of the graphic design style of the rest of the classic science fiction series, which I absolutely love. It was this series was really part of the inspiration for me to become a graphic designer, and part of the inspiration for wanting to do Telltale books is to do books this beautiful. So The Best of Stanley G. Weinbaum, I've got this. I have read this whole book before. Weinbaum is an early science fiction writer. Had a very short career in the 1930s. He wrote for like 2 or 2.5 years, and then he died very young, very suddenly. Cut his career short. There were a couple of his works that were published posthumously, but otherwise that's it. And he actually was very prolific during that short period of time. So this isn't everything he wrote, but his fiction was extremely inspirational on other science fiction writers. Isaac Asimov in particular. So Weinbaum is a great author. We have already reviewed A Martian Odyssey on this channel. That was one of our earliest videos, if you want to look back and take a look at that one. A Martian Odyssey, of course, is Weinbaum's most famous story. His other short stories are definitely worth checking out, though. So that was a great book, and I really, really had to have a nice, fine condition, clean copy of The Best of Stanley G. Weinbaum. And unfortunately, unlike a lot of the other of the classic science fictions of this classic science fiction series, a lot of the others were never published in hardcover. Now, I don't really like the looks of the hardcover. They're not they don't have the same look as the Del Rey books, but hardcover does. If you take care of your books, hardcovers will last longer than paperbacks. They're less prone to spine breaking, less prone to covers getting damaged, and they're just easier to read, and if they're done right. Okay, so moving on to stuff that I have not read. I've got a good stack of books that I've never read. I'll start with this one. This is probably, here's an example, if you can see this corner. This is a brand new book. This happened in the packaging. It got dinged. Okay, that's what you get with softcover books. That's why I prefer hardcover. But this one, again, is only available in softcover. It's published by Wildside Press. I believe it's the only book of Milton A. Rothman that you can get. Otherwise, you would have to track Milton A. Rothman down in all the different magazines that he published in. But you don't have to, because Heavy Planet and other science fiction stories, to the best of my research ability, this is all of Rothman's science fiction stories. He was not a prolific author. I believe he was a working scientist and just did writing as an enjoyable thing. He was a fan. He loved doing it. He started writing. He published Heavy Planet in Astounding Stories, I believe. It became an instant classic of science fiction. It is really good, though. It's a little too short. But it is a great story. And it's the only one of his stories that I've read so far. This has the rest of his. It has his fiction that he published professionally. It has 4 fanzine stories that were published in science fiction fanzines. It has 3 previously unpublished stories, and it has a couple of memoirs. It's an interesting book, and one which I want to read everything and report on, because it'll allow me to cover the whole career and everything Milton A. Rothman wrote for you. And I can tell you all about that classic science fiction author. Okay, so now into uncharted territory. Something weird I've been doing. I'll admit it's weird. But I just got a nostalgia kick of wanting all of the science fiction magazines from my birth month, September 1964. And in researching that, I'm finding out some magazines didn't even publish that month, like If magazine. For some reason, I don't know why, they were publishing monthly, but for some reason they didn't publish a September 1964 issue. Doesn't exist. And then looking at the bibliographies of a lot of my favorite authors, I keep striking out on anything they wrote that was published in September of 64. Brian Aldiss is the most recent one. He was very prolific, especially during that period, and he didn't publish anything in September. Published a lot of other stories in 1964, but he skipped September. So I've been getting a little frustrated about that, but I've been continuing to do it. Last month I got a hold of a copy of Analog for September 64, and I actually went ahead and bought 3 consecutive issues of Analog, because there was Analog published a lot of serials, and the September issue had the conclusion of the serial. I forget what the story was, but that issue had the conclusion of a serial. So I got the other 2 issues, so I have the complete serial, because I hate that, having just part 3 of 3 parts of a serial. That drives me nuts. So the most recent one I got, anyway, is Amazing Stories for September of 1964. And this one actually is a pretty cool issue, where the others have been kind of disappointing as far as the quality of what was published that month. This one has some at least good authors. I haven't read any of these stories. I don't know the stories at all. But they're great authors, so I think I'm going to enjoy it. The lead story is Kingdoms of the Stars by Edmund Hamilton. That's a novelette. Another novelette is Clean Slate by James H. Schmitz, another great classic author. And then in the short stories, there's one called The Sheeted Dead by Robert Rohrer. I'm not at all familiar with him. But there's also The Dowry of Angmar by Ursula K. Le Guin. I've never heard of that story. 1964 will be very early for her, so before she really became famous. But it's Ursula K. Le Guin in this issue. So, and this issue is in wonderful shape. It's great. So I got that. Oh, where to next? P. Schuyler Miller was an author that made a bit of a splash, especially for Genus Homo that he wrote in collaboration with L. Sprague de Camp. But he really didn't write very much. He became quite well known, but he really didn't write very much. He wrote a very, very short bibliography of science fiction. One of his best and his own, I think it's his only really long work, is The Titan. And I got this in the Fantasy Press, first edition. And this is in amazing shape. It's like brand new. And it's more than just The Titan. There's a number of his other short stories along with it, including Old Man Mulligan, which is a well-known story by P. Schuyler Miller. So this is one of those books, though, where I've read Old Man Mulligan. Really haven't read anything else by P. Schuyler Miller. Don't know much about him. Don't know much about The Titan. Stay tuned, because I'll read it. But it's considered to be a classic of Golden Age science fiction, so I think I'm going to love it, even if you don't. Another Golden Age from an author I do know I love, though I haven't ever read this one. Sinister Barrier by Eric Frank Russell. And this again, this is another Fantasy Press book, and it's in wonderful shape. This one is not perfect shape. There's a little bit of writing on the back. Somebody was doing a checklist on the books that are available. Beautiful illustrations inside by Ed Cartier. Awesome. This is a highly regarded science fiction classic. Even though I haven't read this, like I say, I have read other works by Eric Frank Russell, and I love his work. I think I'll love this one too. And this is interesting. Have I got... Well, aside from H.G. Wells, this is the only one I have in this book haul, but I've been noticing I happen to like a lot of British science fiction writers. I'm just kind of noticing that, and I've been thinking about that, and that's going to generate a video in the near future about British science fiction, and the fact that I'm discovering that most of my favorite authors are British authors. I'm part British ancestry, but I've never been over there. I've really never been out of the United States, so my German English ancestry means nothing. I'm a United Statesian, and for that matter, a Midwesterner, tried and true. But this one, very beautiful book, really great condition, wonderful cover. Fantasy Press, which is one of the early presses, and this is a first edition Sinister Barrier. I do also have a paperback. Check my Etsy store. As soon as I can dig it out of my collection, I'm going to be selling the paperback. The paperback copy I currently have is actually unread. I bought it brand new, have never read it. Okay, this is going to be going on Etsy. It has a really beautiful illustration on the cover, which I almost hate giving up, but I mean, first edition, Fantasy Press. Also a beautiful illustration, if not as beautiful. So this is the one I'm keeping. The paperback is going on Etsy. Another from a different of the early specialty fantasy science fiction horror publishers. This is an Arkham House book. Not a really old one, though. It's from 70s? 1976. Kexes and Other Twilight Tales. Marjorie Bowen. Don't know the first thing about Marjorie Bowen. This is part of a project I have, because Arkham House was published in Sauk City, Wisconsin. Okay, and August Derleth, that founded Arkham House and who was a friend of H.P. Lovecraft, he's a Wisconsinite. And Arkham House was really the first specialty science fiction fantasy horror publisher. So there's just every reason to try and get every Arkham House book. And so I bought this because it's Arkham House, not because I know anything about Marjorie Bowen, but I expect I'll like her. Oh, and that actually ties in with Stanley Weinbaum. Stanley Weinbaum was from Wisconsin, and it was part of the, what are they called, the Fictioneers or something like that? They were a science fiction fan group in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And Stanley Weinbaum was part of that group, and Robert Bloch of Psycho fame was part of that group, as well as a bunch of others. Just an interesting tie to Wisconsin with two of my books here. I've got a couple more Golden Age authors here in my recent haul. First one, Fritz Leiber, who is best known for, I'm going to murder the pronunciation of his, Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser. I hope I got close. He's best known for that very famous fantasy series. He wrote a lot of other stories and novels, including The Wanderer, which won a Hugo Award in the 1960s, and I'm forgetting the name of it. He wrote one about a guy who's married to a witch, which was made into a movie in the 1940s. And of course, later on, you had Bewitched, which was the same subject. Those were kind of based on, he was part of the Hollywood crowd. His father was a famous silent film actor. And he himself did a little bit of acting, and his novel about the witch did get made into a movie. A movie was based on it. So anyway, this novel, not very well known. It's a short novel, so this is actually a collection. It has the novel and a couple other short stories. It's You're All Alone. I don't know a whole lot about it, but the illustrations I've seen for copies of different editions have always made me curious about it. I mean, especially this. It's got a guy it looks like Alfred Hitchcock being a puppeteer, and there's somebody hooked up to the puppeteer wires, and there's a cat. And the cat looks like it's huge because there's this little guy underneath the cat. It's absolutely whacked out cover illustration. So if the story is that way, let's read the back cover. The 12 Commandments: always keep up appearances, always be doing something, always be first or last, always be alone. Title is You're All Alone. Always have a route of escape, never hesitate or you're lost, never do anything odd, it wouldn't be noticed. Never move things, it makes gaps, never run, they're faster, never touch anyone, danger, machinery. Some animals are really alive, never look at a stranger, it might be one of them. Disobey these laws at your peril. In this world of imitation people, where it is dangerous to let it be known you're alive, you're all alone. And this book, this edition, also includes Four Ghosts in Hamlet and The Creature from Cleveland Depths. I know nothing about any of these, really. I just know I've read Fritz Leiber. He's written some really amazing stuff. A Pail of Air is a short story that I think is just incredible. So I'm looking forward to reading that one. And here's one, a very early science fiction author. He actually goes back before the Golden Age. He goes all the way back to, I think, 1928 in Amazing Stories was where he published his first story. And that's Jack Williamson, who lived to be almost 100 years old and wrote right up to the end. So he produced a lot of fiction. And I've been gathering together all of his books because I love his books. He never lost, even though his writing starting in the 1940s did become more sophisticated, did become better written, he never lost that sense of wonder, innocence of the 1930s, that incredible imagination of all these things out in the universe. He never lost that right up to the very end. He was writing stories that still captured what was best about those earliest science fiction stories. You know, there's a lot of bad things about the stories of the 1930s, but people still loved them because there was this sense of wonder to them that makes science fiction great, makes it why we keep coming back for more. And Jack Williamson was able to make his writing more sophisticated and yet maintain that 1930s early gosh wow feel to his writing all the way up to the end. Anyway, this particular book is actually a fantasy book. It's a novel, The Reign of Wizardry. It was originally published in Unknown in 1939 or 1940. Not sure. But it's set in Minoan Crete, and they say it's Minoan Crete is the setting of this epic tale of black magic and the forces of evil. The pirate Theseus alone stood against the dark powers of Minos and his wizards. Protected by 3 unconquerable walls, the master of evil enslaved and terrified the ancient world. The struggle of one man against overwhelming odds has made this adventure a true fantasy classic. Can't wait to read it. I don't know anything more about it than what I just read you there, and the fact that I know something about Jack Williamson. I cannot wait to read that book. Now a couple of very highly collectible editions. This one is again an early fantasy writer, kind of science fiction, but mostly fantasy. And that is A. Merritt and The Face in the Abyss. And this is a slipcase collector's edition that was published by Donald M. Grant. And by the way, it's still available. I just bought this off of Grant's website. Donald M. Grant is the publisher famous for publishing the Dark Tower series by Stephen King in its first editions. The first editions were not mass market. Later on, the mass market paperbacks came out, but first, Donald M. Grant published all those books. And this one's The Face in the Abyss by A. Merritt. I wish Grant or somebody would publish more A. Merritt books. Centipede Press just recently listed Burn Witch Burn by A. Merritt, though they took orders and then, apparently something happened to a whole shipment of the books, so they didn't have them. So I got an email after I bought mine on their website. I got an email from them saying, sorry, but we can't fill the order. We're going to be publishing more copies. Do you want to keep your order current and wait the 3 to 4 months? And I said, yeah, I'm in no hurry. I've got lots of other books to read. I buy more books than I can possibly read. But anyway, I also have another very nice one that just came out by Centipede Press, and I think there might still be copies available, and that is The Cipher by Kathy Koja in a very beautiful, very lavishly illustrated edition. I love it. I love the feel of their dust covers. Get a load of the end papers. Awesome. And the book itself, this is foil stamped. It's just a beautiful cover to the actual book. Beyond that, this is one of those, I've never read Kathy Koja. I've never read The Cipher. I don't know anything about this except that it's very highly regarded among horror fans, and Centipede Press thought highly enough of it to publish a beautiful edition. So yeah, I splurged and got it, and I'm going to give it a try and see if I like Kathy Koja. And that's all I got for this book haul. I'm going to do these on a regular basis. I don't know if I'll do it once a week, but at least once a month. I'll show you what I've got. Whenever I have enough of a stack, maybe a shorter stack than this because this is going a little long, but whenever I have enough of a stack, I will do a book haul for you. And you'll be able to see some of the books that are coming down the line that I'll be talking about here on Telltale, and specifically some of the beautiful editions that I've been spending too much money buying. So till next time, please like us and subscribe to us and leave us comments. And check us out on social media, on Instagram and Facebook. Check out our website, telltalebooks.com. I've been listing bibliographies of these different authors as quickly as I can. I've been working for a week now on Brian Aldiss. And come back and watch more of these videos. I'm going to keep coming on here and talking about this, whether anybody's listening to me or not. So I'll see you next time. Till then, maybe you'll discover one of your next favorite stories. Bye.